All right, everybody. Welcome everybody to the Cutaway Security ICS Friday Infosec chat. I'm Don C. Weber with Cutaway Security. As you can tell, I am facility, so you're going to see a little live action of somebody actually getting out there and doing assessment. Actually, this weekend, 2 tournament. So we'll be watching him. Hopefully everybody can hear me getting out of the bus. I'll walk over to a little bit quieter area over here at the side here. If you're joining us via LinkedIn or YouTube or Twitter, welcome. Thank you very much. Here, let me take off my mask. Connectivity issues. Sorry about that. I can see your comments. Hopefully, I'm going off of the mobile device. I'm actually switching back and forth, and it looks like our connectivity is low. So I'm walking out here outside. It should pick up in just a minute. ICS Friday. Well, it's I was actually in the Discord watching a lot of people. We were talking about. I mentioned that I was coming out here and traveling, and they're like, "Wow, you're traveling." I haven't been in an airport in a couple of years. Pretty busy on the plane and in the flight, and yeah, it was. That's just a part of it. So I'm looking for some guests. Doesn't look like we have any guests joining us just yet. I'm not seeing any comments. I have no idea if I'm actually communicating with anybody right now and talking, but we'll keep this going. So yeah, definitely I'm traveling out here and waiting. I'll pick up my car in a little while. As you can see behind me, this is the DFW rental facility. And I haven't been to Dallas in actually a couple of years. I think I came up here for a couple of days. We saw some friends. We'll hang out here and we'll see some friends this weekend. On Sunday, we'll go to the IBJJF Jiu-Jitsu tournament. A lot of people in information security are into Jiu-Jitsu. I like it. I haven't done it in 4 months. I'm not following my own advice, which is to get everybody get out and do things. Hi, Russell. Good to see you. I no idea, Russell. I don't have any idea if you're the only person or not, that's joining us or can see me. Let me know if you can. It looks like people can hear me talking. We can hear the planes going overhead and so forth. So, Russell, if you have any questions, if you want to jump on, I know you have the link. Go ahead and jump on with me, and I'll try to add you. Yeah. So travel. Yeah, we definitely. One of the things that I was actually talking with Tim Conway. We were talking about penetration testing and doing the control environments, trying to get that done. Excellent. Yeah, so we definitely we're talking about that, and we're talking about just remoting in, and whether or not you can do that. A lot of people are familiar with doing that penetration testing, sending a Dropbox to the clients, which allows them to remote in, VPN in. But think about the control environments. Think about whether or not they're going to be happy with adding your Dropbox in to their control environment, allowing that to VPN out. They're probably not. One of the other problems that we have, I like to do all of my testing on site. If I'm in a test lab, I guess that's okay. But definitely, but even then, it's pretty risky. I want to see the operators face to face. I want to sit down and talk to them. I want to understand what they're doing, what their purpose is. It's a little bit difficult to do that remotely. You can get a little bit of that over the phone. You can get some phone interviews, and they'll be happy to supply you with the information, talking about what their stuff is, what they do, what their intentions are. But until you actually see how it's wired, until you see how they're actually going through their day-to-day for that process, you don't really see what's going on. Hey, Russell. We're going to add you to the stream. Russell, how you doing, sir?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Awesome. You can hear me. Hey, I appreciate you jumping on with me. Like I said, I have no idea. I'm doing this out of my mobile device, so I have limited access to seeing how many people are connecting in from LinkedIn and from YouTube and stuff like that. So, Russell, hey, this is the first time on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself and let us know what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Russell. I will soon to be full-time and as a IT security specialist on the blue team side, but I have been on the red team with pen testing credit unions for the past 7 years.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Yeah, so a lot of process there, a lot of workflow, a lot of devices that you have to take into consideration around that. Is that what you're doing now? I mean, are you in the financial right now, and I'm sorry if I kind of missed it. I'm distracted.
So I mostly just do assessments
Okay.
of the credit unions, the financial. Uh, I look at the regulations that they specifically care about coming from the NCUA, and that's the FFIEC, but that aligns almost one to one with NIST CSF, anyways. So reading up on standards, making sure that my testing plan matches what they do need to check, and then working with the IT managers and CEOs because sometimes credit unions are really small, um, just to make sure things get remediated and the big low hanging fruit are accounted for.
So you're not working for an individual credit union. You're working for somebody that works with credit unions.
So I own my own company with
Oh, okay.
pen testing credit unions,
Oh, nice.
and so credit union is small credit unions. Think 1 to 5 branches total. They usually do manage service providers for their IT, and then they will contract with me to test their their entire system from business processes to IT processes to make sure that any kind of risk is accounted for, captured, and then any threats or vulnerabilities to that are remediated.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of things that you're already using a lot of terms that we use in the control environments. Make sure you put like your LinkedIn and for the company and in the chat when you have a moment. But when you talk about regulation, that's one of the things that I was pretty um, uh, it was I was going to say pleasantly surprised, but it wasn't even really pleasantly surprised. I was just it was interesting to find out that going into these different control environments, that they specifically build things to standards. We talk about the international standards, the ISA, the IEC, and they start asking questions like about what our expectations are around security. They want to know what standards we're actually testing them to, holding them accountable for, because that's the way they develop things. That's the way if they have to fix something, they're looking to the standards to determine what is expected of them, and then making it work. So it sounds like the financial industry has a lot of regulations that is governing your activities and what the expectations.
Yeah, and my full so that was a part-time job that I pen test credit unions with, but my full-time job up until Monday when I start blue teaming full-time has been in
Oh,
the OT environment. I was a controls engineer for 2.5 years, and so it's really
oh, okay.
interesting to see how we take a set of requirements from the customer and we have to engineer to those requirements. If that included regulation for security, um, we would need to uh, engineer to that. But it's kind of scary how little security specific regulations we were given. Uh,
Mhm.
with healthcare being probably the number one, and then everything else just kind of falling behind.
Yeah, and Russell, I know you and I have kind of gone over all of this, and certainly, I'm trying to remember some of it, some of our previous conversations. So I appreciate you being understanding of that. So if you can talk a little bit about, you mentioned that you're going to start doing blue team and the OT, and that's something that not a lot of people talk about, which is monitoring and reacting to things from a network standpoint within the OT environment. So, what are your experiences so far with interviewing with the team and stuff like that? Understand your expectations, and what do you expect?
Yeah, so the team I'll be joining is really well-rounded and well-educated. They seem like a pretty top-tier team, but I'm really hoping to start to bring in some of the architecting uh, aspect that I've taken some classes in before. I've helped off the cuff architecting, and really hoping to kind of develop that as my niche, because that's kind of how I see a career path and also just my interest path develop. So to answer your question, monitoring and responding, I'm hoping to start to focus more on the left of boom, um, and building in security so that when we're responding to something, it's they've breached uh, X layer, and we've caught them, and we now need to trust that our other defenses in depth will prevent further escalation while we remediate what they did breach.
Yeah, and that's I'm sure that's going to be a huge education on what you can and can't do. You already know the sensitivity of the networks. My experience and everything that's been explained to me. And I haven't done incident response in a control environment. I'll just put that out there. But what we teach at SANS, from coming from the people that implement things, about identifying attackers, threat actors within the control environments, and taking action against them. While we might take immediate action within our control or within our corporate environments, within our financial environments, sometimes we need to, within our control environments, understand where they're at, get an understanding of their persistence mechanisms, their methodology for coming in, rather than just playing this whack-a-mole, which a lot of businesses are able to do. In our OT environments, we can't play whack-a-mole. We have to understand completely what they're doing to our best ability, get comfortable with that. We can knock them out all at the same time and just like drop the hammer or drop the wall on that threat group or those threat actors at the same time. So it's going to be interesting to see what you have to talk about in a year.
For sure. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. The from an OT standpoint, what yeah. So can you tell us what? So were you actually architecting solutions? Were you building things? Were you deploying processes, PLCs, and field endpoints?
Yeah, so it was a systems integrator that I worked with
Okay.
as a controls engineer. So that was the full gambit, taking in requirements, working with mechanical engineers as they designed the overall mechanical system, and then architecting, engineering, and then uh, live programming, debugging before the customer would end up taking control of the machinery.
Excellent.
Uh,
Yeah. So
so
that integration experience, I think, is going to just take you a long way in understanding. You're going to learn new concepts and new uh, different types of protocols and implementations and so forth. I'm sure you'll be challenged there, but that's a part of our learning process, right? So, what protocols are you most familiar with right now?
so I'm kind of behind on that, but I'd say Ethernet IP was the one that I used extensively. So Allen Bradley PowerFlex drives,
Okay,
the PowerFlex servos, and uh, really the going further, compact logics was like the bread and butter that I was using and responsible for, with a little bit
okay,
of familiarity with control logics, and before that, like micrologics. So Studio 5000 panel views with um, Allen Bradley, just the whole Allen Bradley and Rockwell software combination.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, if there's anybody listening, and you have any questions for Russell or myself, anybody on LinkedIn, anybody on YouTube, say hello, give a shout out, hands up, and let us see if you have any questions for. I'm putting Russell in the hot seat right now. So, Russell, do you have any questions? Do you have? And I can't tell. I mean, first of all, how is this? I mean, I got planes flying overhead. I got buses driving by. Is that a distraction? Is it hard to hear me?
No, so you sound fine. Occasionally, your video gets choppy,
Okay.
but the audio is fine. And I think my video cuts out, and I don't know if that's because of
Me.
StreamYard trying to combine the two,
Right.
or just my internet being kind of bad right now. Um,
Excellent. So Russell, do you have any questions for me, or is there a topic that you wanted to approach, talk about? You think it's important? What do you think?
yeah, so I'd be really interested in what kind of appliances you think about when looking at architecting an OT solution. Customer comes up to you and says, "Hey, we're doing the pig farm, and so we have this PLC that controls the doors opening, closing, feed, and lights. So like kind of a simple thing, let's say. And then,
Mm-hmm.
but we're running this to an MES or a SCADA system in order to monitor this from a couple miles down the road. Uh, but because it's linked through that SCADA, possibly through like just a regular internet service provider that has a business dedicated link, what kind of appliances are you looking at in order to protecting like a PLC? Like I haven't ever heard of a next gen firewall in front of a like a Stratix managed switch.
Right, and that's so. Uh, can I want to repeat the question back so that I can, because there was a lot there. And so I want to focus in specifically on your question about the communications directly to that end, to that controller. So you're asking what protections, if we needed protections, would we put in front of a controller? That's kind of like the first part of your question, right?
Yeah, yeah. What kind of
Mm-hmm.
appliances do we have available to us
Right. And so
on the OT?
yes, and you know, first of all, I am not even going to pretend to be an architect, a process architect, or anything like that. I am an information security professional. I understand how they're implemented. But I make recommendations. I don't know which would be the better solution. But uh, when we're considering, when I'm making my recommendations around this, there are absolutely some host-based firewalls. Excuse me, not host-based firewalls, some transparent firewalls that you can get usually from the same vendor. Most of the vendors have a transparent firewall that is specific to the protocol. So if you're doing EINP, if SIP and so forth, you can select a transparent firewall that has those capabilities. But now it's just a matter, just like any other firewall or security control that you're putting in, you have to tune it. You have to understand, what the communications are going to be, what that device allows you to control, meaning like reads and writes, and which devices can communicate, and possibly even which roles can communicate. So I don't recommend a specific device because every deployment is different, and know that as an integrator you understand the uniqueness of every process. So I don't like to engineer things. I like to make recommendations. So in that case, I would work with the team to identify whether that controller is critical, because you're asking to make a modification to the network. You're asking for additional costs. You're asking for potentially asking them to bring in new technologies, which means new training and so forth. So that's a lot of expense to add. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't even know that the transparent firewall for an OT environment existed until you mentioned that.
So yeah, so what I can do is, and I'm using transparent firewall as a generic term. There might be some more specific terms. Look at, I mean, the first one that I learned about was the Tofino firewall. There are plenty more out there. Like I said, every vendor has their own version of them now. My understanding is that they used to be really expensive, but now they've gotten a much more affordable, and that is basically supply and demand. More people are asking for it. The expectation is that integrators and vendors and integrators are going to be putting into their deployments, and but it can still be expensive. So I'll get you a list of what we have, in the SAN slides. The ones that I'm familiar with. I honestly, I've never run into that. I know people that have run into that. I'm actually about to trying to schedule an assessment for a gas and oil platform, and my buddies, a few of my buddies went out, and when it was here in Corpus Christi, or back in Corpus Christi, where I'm from, they actually went on to it, and that whole deployment, there was the Tofino firewalls implemented at all the critical junctures in front of all the critical equipment. So I do know they're out there. I just haven't run into it at the locations that I've been.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's probably my biggest question is how do you start architecting or reviewing the architecture of that OT?
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like it's very similar to architecting a traditional IT environment where instead of saying use this specific device, you're saying engineering handles the selection of the device and the configuration of the device. You're saying block these non these protocols that aren't Ethernet IP. Allow only Ethernet IP come through, and then we can inspect that a little bit further at the engineering level. Um, but at the architect level, we want a firewall that allows Ethernet IP.
Right. Yeah, you cut out a little bit in there, but I got the gist of what you're going at, and absolutely, it's it, when we're talking about processes, if we're talking about putting limitations in there, there's always the potential that that can have a negative impact on the production. So you have to understand the requirements that are the process is built to understand the recommendations that you need to make. And I harp it all the time. I actually say when I say that, hey, I'm not a process guy. I break things. I go in and I can take advantage of situations, and I can help you understand the risk of the things that I can do, and then I work with the teams to understand how we can limit those types of activities. So I always approach it from a prevention. We do want to do prevention, but then we have to do detection. You can't see my fingers, right? So prevention, detection, which is kind of what the firewall is going to help us achieve, and response. You have to do those three things, right? But if you're not ready, your prevention is worthless if you're not detecting, using that as a detection method, because most of the time they're going to be using the protocols as they should be. So it's difficult to understand what is unauthorized behavior. You have to monitor it, you have to review it. And then if you're reviewing it, if you can see it, you have to respond. Why waste all of this extra time to spend money on prevention and detection if you're not going to monitor it, take action, and determine whether or not they are actually threat actors doing that, whether it's insider threat or whether it's some external threat, and addressing that situation.
Absolutely. That reminds me of a recent project that would have someone approached me and asked, hey, can we do this? And looking into the numbers, I was like, okay, we can. It's going to cost this amount of money. But if you do this, you must act on it. You can't, you're going to go down this pathway, and inaction is just wasted time and money. And it's same thing with security controls, where if you can detect it, but you can never stop it, uh, it's just kind of useless. Like why even
Mm-hmm.
have it at that point? Obviously, that that's kind of a fallacy too.
We are trying to make sure that the process is available, that it's resilient to failures, and that it keeps going. And on top of all of that, that it's also safe. Okay, so the only way to do that is to leverage the tools correctly, just like they're leveraging all of their tools to understand what's going on in the process, so that they can make sure that the process is available, working as expected. We're just adding another tool set into that. Now, certainly other people should be monitoring it. We should be doing our best to not have a negative impact on any of those things within that environment. We have to take into consideration throughput. We're talking about things that are going across the network. We're talking about putting something in the middle of something, and the great thing about the firewalls that we were just talking about, what I was calling the transparent firewalls, is that when they're coming from the vendors that are building them for these specific implementations, they know what the latency is. And so they can provide that information to the process engineer so that they can look at the requirements and determine whether or not that's acceptable or not. But if you're not taking that information, like, we can do that prevention. We can put those blocks in. Okay, but if it does block something, that means that something we didn't expect to happen happened. And typically, as you well know, by building these environments, whereas in a corporate environment, it might be okay if somebody, just starts, like, oh man, I'm looking to try to accomplish this thing. You know what? I'm just going to attach to this file share and look for this document. It might be there. Okay, that type of activity, while probably shouldn't happen in the corporate environment, it happens all the time. In an OT environment, people know not to mess around. They know not to send commands. There might be a need for an engineer or an operator or a field technician to connect the laptop in to do those communications. But even then, you should be following up with them. And so what we're talking about here, would provide that understanding that, yeah, somebody did connect in to do maintenance. Did we approve that? Were they supposed to be there and doing that? But what happens is that when you bring people with corporate knowledge of a SOC into these areas, they might not understand those requirements and those needs, and they might raise the flags really, really fast, or they might just that's just somebody connecting in. It's using the protocol, so it should be accepted. They don't understand the nuances of a control environment, and that's where your knowledge of all of that is going to be powerful. Your communications with the operators and the engineers, understanding learning from them what their actual process should be doing, then you can build that into how you're helping them deploy and tune their system. So I'm really excited for you, Russell.
Thanks, and thanks for the coaching earlier and today. I appreciate it.
We're all in this together. Someday Russell, I'm gonna be turning to you and saying, hey man, I see this, is this normal? Is this what you would expect as an integrator, and so forth? I've got so many questions for integrators, like, why did you make choices? Actually, yeah. So when you were building a new solution, and and I'm sure you've built some, what you might look back at as insecure solutions. So what do you think about those days now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say some of the insecurity that I've built into the system came from of needing access quicker, needing to log into something across multiple users. One user needs a maintenance access, for example, and so. But looking at that now, and I was just thinking about this the other day, I would absolutely want to have those default credentials, which was often what we did, and change those to just at least the minimum complexity with a note that says this needs to be changed. So writing down those passwords, while we might see that as something that's egregious, at least in an OT environment, the threats that are going to shut down OT often aren't physically present. And so even if they're written down sticky note and it's a complex password that other users can share, that's still magnitudes better than something like a 4-digit PIN that is the same across every machine.
Right. So, Russell, I actually tapped something and I didn't hear half of that. So, but that's okay. I'll watch it back later. And I actually think that it maintained the stream and stuff like that. But I understand what you're just saying about passwords. Everybody, if you want to get a hold of myself, you want to get a hold of Russell, we're both in the Cutaway Security Discord. If you still need links to that, just hit either of us on LinkedIn. Look for us there. Russell, I really appreciate you jumping onto this and helping me kind of move through this, even though I'm at the DFW rental car facility and traveling. So thanks for helping to support this. That's the 30 minutes. So that's the end of our time together. Russell, I'll talk to you later. And everybody on LinkedIn, YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let us know if you have a topic or you want to be on the stream at some point. We'll make sure you're on it. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye, Russell.
Bye. Take care.